Hello all, this is Cinematic Breakdown, and I will be your omnipotent voice for the evening. In this video, I want to take a moment to talk about my favorite background character. And when I say background character, I do not mean extra. I mean a character that is so underused that I would feel like a liar to call them a supporting character. However, that probably is what they would be called. Now, to quit calling them and actually tell you who I'm talking about, the person in question is Hirokoji Sachiko from the film From Up on Poppy Hill. This was written by Hayao Miyazaki and Hiko Niwa, and it was directed by Goro Miyazaki. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about Hirokoji one bit at a time in the order that the film presents. But to preface, I want to talk a bit about how characters such as her are normally used, and that would be as filler. You see, in this story, the main character lives in a boarding house that's run by her family. Because of this, when she's not at school, most of her time is spent working there. The various tenants, on the surface, add a lot of texture and color to her life, but for the most part, have no actual bearing on the film. They're just there as stand-ins. The main character has to struggle between balancing work with school with the social life she wants. They are a walking embodiment of that. She needs to wake up early to feed them. She needs to go shopping for the food to feed them with. She needs to pay attention to the hired help, doling out responsibilities, or allowing time off. However, other than serving as a source of banter for dialogue scenes or their sheer existence as something to stress about, they really don't do much for the plot. Now, I'm not criticizing. In any story, not everyone can be a fully fleshed out character. Movies would literally never end. I'm just acknowledging that the only purpose they serve is to be there as something for the main character to deal with. Except for Hirokoji. Now, I know I said there isn't time to fully flesh out everyone, but some of their character descriptions ends after it works in the hospital. Of course, you also have her brother and sister, and while they are less background than the Boarders, they are basically part of the same I have too much to do problem that the Boarders are. At least the brother is. The sister gets a small micro story arc, sorta kinda. But Hirokoji, for as little time as she gets, is actually a fully developed character. To begin getting into her specifically, let's talk about her introduction. What's interesting is that she's actually introduced in advance of her true introduction. The main character sticks her head out the window and calls up to her to let her know that breakfast is ready. And this tells us a few things. First, this character is consistently late enough to need to be called in such a manner, but has enough get up and go to only need to be told once, and casually at that. And since I know context can be lost when seeing only short trimmed down clips, I'm going to add that Hirokoji wasn't late. They weren't sitting around thinking, where is she? Someone should call up to her. The main character just knew that part of preparing breakfast is calling up to Hirokoji to get her down to eat. Next, her actual introduction. This takes place only a few moments later when she rushes into the kitchen, says good morning, takes her seat, and after that, just politely takes part in the morning ritual that is preparing to eat. Then, when the main character's little sister comes in late, commenting about how she can't get her hair right, Hirokoji just remarks that her hair actually looks pretty. Now, if we look at the fact that Hirokoji actually has the messiest hair in the room, then we learn something about her. She may not care about physical appearance or presentation, but she doesn't for one single moment begrudge people that do. Very often, if you have a messy character, for some reason, they find clean people a burden that they need to fight against. I don't know how this came to be, but it's become so set in stone that not seeing this portrayed is actually refreshing. Secondly, it tells us that she's nice, quick thinking, and straight to the point, which isn't a massive amount of description. Also, if you watch and listen, you'll see that she doesn't feel bad for the kid and is being nice. She just thought something and then said it. That's all. So maybe the fact that with only 2 sentences and a few seconds, we learn that she's slow to move but quick to think, is laid back but not lazy, doesn't mind being told to get a move on but also doesn't hesitate to speak her mind and just seems to cut right to the point of things, all while being fairly easygoing about it, says a lot. Now, I'm just going to let that sink in a moment while I say one more thing about all this. All these things are contradictory. Most characters are slow or fast, not both. Characters who get told what to do don't speak their mind, and those who speak their mind are sarcastic, bordering on mean. But she's not. They don't flatten her into a quote-unquote character. She's a person. The next time we see her is a brief moment later that night. The main character went to school, and some plot happened. Later, back at home while she's working, her little sister is telling the story of what happened to 2 of the Boarders, one of which is Hirokoji. Not too much happens here, but after all we got in her introduction, that doesn't really matter. We do, however, see her eagerly listening to the sister, and after misunderstanding something, causing a laugh. It's a while until we see her again. But when we do, it's when the main character is preparing dinner for the boarders. While she's doing this, Hirokoji walks into the room, and this happens.
なっちゃった。カレーにするから野菜を刻んでくれる？いいよ。
Now this may not seem like much, but remember, Hirokoji is one of the boarders here. She pays money to live in this house, and part of living there includes turn-down service, meals, things of that nature. This would be like you staying in a hotel and coming back at the end of the day to find the maid cleaning up, and she turns to you and says, can you change the sheets while I take out the garbage? And you just say, sure, and start doing it. And not only does she say sure, but she knows exactly what to grab and where it is. So clearly, this is far from unusual. In fact, it's standard fare. Then, the main character realizes that she's out of fish and needs to run off to buy some. All she tells Hirokoji is,
ヒロさん、10分経ったらお釜に火をつけてください。
and Hirokoji replies,
おーい。
that's it. She didn't apologize, she didn't ask her for a favor, she just told her and Hirokoji didn't blink. It's fine. She's just that chill. She's ready to help. And while she's not chomping at the bit to do so, it's unquestionably not a burden. She's happy to contribute, even if she has no other reason other than something needs to be done, and she's there. One last thing about this bit. I absolutely love her posture here. She's standing up straight and hunched over her work at the same time, literally, with her head hanging horizontally directly over the cutting board. Like everything else we learned about her so far, she continues to be a contradiction, being multiple things at once, both of which normally would be mutually exclusive. The next time we meet Hirokoji, she has been sleeping late. The main character comes in to check on her and sees a painting. In the middle of it is a small boat with signal flags. The main character raises the signal flags of her own as part of her morning ritual, and Hirokoji comments that she sees this boat often and that it may or may not be responding to her flags. This is actually very important for the plot for reasons I'm not going to get into. Now, first we learn very simply that she is an artist. And not just an artist, but an abstract impressionist of considerable skill. And the first thing Hirokoji says is,
ダメだ。夜描いたから色が出てない。
Now, hopefully any artists out there probably just laughed. For those who either aren't or didn't, I'll spell it out for you. She doesn't consider what she's done to be good enough. This is throwaway to her. And if this is throwaway, then just take a moment to consider how high her standards are and how good the works must be that she does feel pleased about. Now, I feel it's pretty clear what this says about her, so I'm just going to move on to the next bit. But if it isn't, then I'm sorry, but I'm just not sure what to say. But following this moment, you have that one about the boat, in which Hirokoji, casually and still half asleep, tosses out,
よく通る船だよ。メルがあげると返事してるみたい。そっか。メルからは見えないんだ。返事？私に？
And then, while the main character is considering this, Hirokoji is only thinking one thing.
腹減った。
Which brings us back to the one thing I've already said. She's right to the point. And it also brings us something else. She's not decoration. The other characters, they are decoration. They're wall dressing. They add some texture to the world. They're like an expensive painting in a rich CEO's office. They literally mean nothing, other than to provide proof to the audience that the CEO is rich enough to afford such a painting. They assist in world building and character description, but they don't have any real impact on the story. But Hirokoji does. She doesn't know she does. Some audience members may not even realize she does, but she does. And this is fantastic. She's more than just banter and window dressing. She's a true supporting character in the real sense of the word. How many background characters who can get confused as glorified extras do you think of that actually have a tangible effect on the plot? Because the list is short, and she's on it. The next time we encounter Hirokoji is just a throwaway joke, but they're talking about having a party and one of them says she wants to invite some guys over, and that's when Hirokoji pops up out of nowhere, not knowing what they're talking about. After this, we're at the party previously being discussed, and Hirokoji is just having a blast, ignoring everyone and just eating. And this is another reason I like her. She serves one of the purposes that people forget background characters are there to serve: make exposition interesting. Because while the people on the left are talking nonsense, and the people on the right are talking nonsense, Hirokoji and the little brother are providing the entertainment through the ancient art of being goofy around food. It starts off small. We see her eating from a plate that looks like it should be a serving dish for 20 people. Then we see her only a few seconds later, finishing the plate off, and this is almost immediately followed by watching as she begins to pick the food off the other serving tray, meant for the other half of the table, only to give up and straight up just swap out their tray of food for the empty one she demolished, leaving them with nothing. And it's just funny. You could say it's rude of her to take all their food, They're clearly so caught up in talking about things the audience already knows that they aren't here to eat, which completely neutralizes the rudeness of it. But her and the little brother aren't just here as a throwaway gag. They are actively making the fact that the others are rehashing known information palatable. In fact, you probably didn't even notice what they're talking about, which here is a good thing. You see, outside of Hirokoji, plot has been happening, and all the people around this table are swept up in it, or at least most of them. And what was supposed to be a gathering has broken down into people just repeating themselves about what they need to do. Now, people doing this is fairly lifelike, so it's good they put it in. But people doing this is also boring for an audience, hence the little show put on by Hirokoji and the brother. You're only listening to the others enough to know that they're rehashing old news, but are fully entertained in the sight gag. It doesn't last long, just enough time to let us keep up with the plot without droning on. And then, it moves on to more stuff outside of Hirokoji's realm. But by then, the scene has done what it needed to do and stayed interesting through Hirokoji's antics, and all without hurting her character. This doesn't seem out of the ordinary for her. She's not being weird just to artificially create a gag to hide exposition. It comes off as every way as an organic part of who she really is. The next time we see Hirokoji is shortly after the main character was raising the flags in the morning again. We see this from the outside of the house, and then we cut to Hirokoji's room, where we see the main character running in, while Hirokoji is standing by the window looking out for the tugboat. And we can tell from the presentation that the main character was fully aware that Hirokoji would be standing there watching. It was organized in advance. Hirokoji is doing her a favor. She had been up there looking to see if the tugboat from the painting was out there again this morning. And unfortunately it's not, and that's the end of the scene. Now, we've already covered that Hirokoji is a nice person who would be willing to go out of their way to help out a friend/landlord, so I'm not going to delve that too deep into this. We already understand. So after this, she only appears a couple more times. Once as a glorified extra in the scene around the kitchen table, and then again in a scene later when she's just used as a throwaway joke. However, this doesn't really matter too much because her character has already been established, she served her purpose, so she retreated back into the realm of the more standard background character. Now, we actually don't encounter her again. This is her final screen time. She is just a minor character after all. She did a fill in space, act as part of the texture of the world inhabited by the main character, give the plot a gentle nudge forward, provide minor entertainment during exposition, and then vanish into nothingness, all of which she does supremely well. But despite all this, after watching the film, you really walk away with a true sense of who she is. She's real. Her personality, her temperament, her quirks, her wants, needs, and sense of humor are all substantially there. She's better known and understood than many central characters in other films, and that's why I love her. From her look, to her style, to her attitude, her interactions with those around her, she is the bar that all other background characters should be held to. Peace.